Hello, my name is David Metzger. I work in the parts department at TTG Equipment in Wabash, Indiana. And today one of the things I want to talk about is wear items on the combine preparing for harvest this season. And one of the first things you need to talk about, everything you're going to need is in the manual. The manual is not void if you take it out of the shrink wrap. Please use the manual, ear tag it, highlight it, whatever you need to do. Now I want to stop for a quick infomercial. The best money you can spend is having a technician come out and inspect your combine before harvest even starts. These guys are trained to look at all the wear items. They're trained to look at adjustments, and it's the best money you could ever spend. A good technician will take somewhere between 4 and 5 hours for a combine inspection, but it's the best money that you could spend. Then I want to get into the power of the combine. Obviously, you've got the big engine in there. There's several different size engines. One of the things we want to do is check filters on the engine. Air filter. If the engine can't breathe, you're going to obviously have trouble with horsepower. So check the engine air filter, make sure the radiator's clean and the rotary screen's clean so it can breathe. The next thing you want to do with that engine is feed the engine. We've got to have good fuel filters. Fuel filters should be changed at least once a year. Again, check your operator's manual. We've got ink pens you can write on the filter when you changed it with the hours and the date. Best thing you could do there. Next thing you want to do is the cab filter. If you're going to spend 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day in that cab, obviously you want to have clean air to breathe. Whether it's you, whether it's the wife, whether it's the hired man, got to have clean air to breathe. John Deere now has some heavy duty air filters that helps with the allergens, that you can take that out for somebody that has some allergy problems. Another thing on the combine, the power unit you want to check is the hydraulic filters. Obviously with all the hydraulic system we have in these combines, the hydraulic motors, make sure the hydraulic filters get changed. And one of the last things you may want to check is your air conditioning. Obviously, again, if you're going to be in that cab for as long as you are, let's get the air conditioning checked, make sure it is working properly before you go to the field. So let's start up front with the feeder house. The biggest thing that you're going to have in that feeder house is the reverser. It has a lot of torque, it takes a lot of the heat. The reverser oil gearbox needs to be changed once a year. And we recommend using the heavy-duty synthetic John Deere oil. There's a lot of torque there, there's a lot of heat there. This oil helps to dissipate that heat so that the reverser is going to last longer. Right next to that reverser is the variable speed sheave. We're seeing a lot of times where the sheave is breaking down. It's because you're not using the good quality grease. We have the polyurea grease that is set up for high temp, high torque. On this variable speed sheave on the feeder house, they should have 2 grease zerks. Rock it up so you have one at 12, one at 2. You put 12 pumps in the one at 12. You put 2 pumps in the one at 2. And if you check your book, it's probably going to tell it every 10 hours. Obviously, if you're out there in that field for 12 to 14 hours a day, you're going to have to grease it more than once a day. There's also one at the top of the feeder house that drives that variable speed sheave. There's never variable speed there. Any variable speed sheave on the combine needs to be greased. And before you go to the field, run those sheaves completely out and completely back in again at least 3 to 4 times to dissipate that grease to get it where it needs to be. Just filling it with grease and going to the field is not going to take care of it. And obviously you're going to say, well, David, I've got it set where I want to. I don't want to move the sheaves. Take time to move them so you don't tear out the variable speed sheaves. We have taken those apart and there's a lot of damage done simply because you don't have good quality grease or you don't take time to put the grease where it needs to be. Your feeder house chain needs to be checked. Obviously, if you have bent slats, it's going to make the chain run crooked, which is going to put extra wear on your top sprockets. Top sprockets should have kind of a dull point to them. If you have cupped or sharp points, it's time for the sprockets to be replaced. These can be reversed also. It takes a lot of extra work, but they can be reversed. Also at the top of the feeder house, you should have some plastic slats. This helps guide that feeder house chain around and protects the feeder house floor. These will wear, obviously. Those need to be checked while you're there. Check the drive sprockets on the drive chain, on the roller chain on the other side. That chain is also going to have sharp points if you're not careful with the wear parts there. And then when you get ready to hook up on the S series, the STS series, you have the multi-coupler. Obviously, you want to make that clean. Take time to wipe that with a rag on the combine side, on the head side. And for those of you with platforms, when you unhook that, before you unhook the platform from the combine, lower the reel all the way to the lowest position. We're finding out that when you leave that reel up, the coupler that runs that reel cannot stand the pressure holding that reel up as you're going down the road. We're selling more of those couplers for the reel lift because of that. From there, you get into your threshing elements. You've got a feed accelerator. There are about 30 of these on your feed accelerator, feeding your S-Series, your STS combines. You'll notice these are cupped a little bit. As these wear and get rounded, you're going to lose that capacity of the cleaning element, this feed accelerator getting into the threshing element. So these need to be checked. These are also reversible if you want to take time to do that. But that is going to get it into your threshing unit, into your tines. So you've got to have these working to get where you will need to. On the threshing element, this is on the rotor, the SDS combine, the S-Series combine. You have the threshing element, you have the tines. This helps to do the separating of the grain, of the product going through. There is a little plastic gauge that you can use to measure these when you want to. Measure the threshing unit, measure the length of the tine, also measures the concave. So use this. We sell these up front. On a walker machine, you're going to have rasp bars and concave. On the rasp bars, it's going to tell you a 1/4 inch. If you have less than a 1/4 inch wear, it's time to change the rasp bars. But it's hard to get a ruler in there. Easiest thing to do, an old gentleman taught me this, find a 1/4. Lay George on his nose. If you can see his nose in that groove of the rasp bar, time to change rasp bars. Very simple way to do it. On the concave on the walker machines, when that gets rounded, you're going to have trouble with threshing. It's not going to do as good a quality job. We have many customers come in and say, well, I used to be able to run this combine and beans at 3 miles an hour. Now I can't do more than 1. There's a reason. Your rasp bars, your concave's worn out. It's taking too much time to try and get through that. Also, it affects the quality because the threshing elements are not working the way they should. It affects the quality of the grain going on through. Once you've passed the grain through the threshing elements, the rasp bars, concaves, obviously you've got the chaffer and sieve taking care of some of that. You want to check the chaffer and the sieves, the fingers on those. On your older walker machines, there are a lot of bushings in those arms that does the rocking. There's bushings on the straw walkers. Those all need to take a look at and check. Now you're into the grain handling. We've got the grain going into the clean grain elevator chain. That's you want to check the top sprocket and the bottom sprocket. Again, it's going to be a little bit like your feeder house. They should have kind of a square top here. If they start getting cupped or pointed, it's time to replace the sprockets. On your clean grain elevator chain, new from the factory, it has a half link in it. As you tighten the chain up and you run out of adjustment, take the adjustment all the way back out, take the half link out, and when you start adjusting again, once you've run out of adjustment, it's time to replace the chain. Clean grain takes it into the loading auger in the grain bin. Hardest working auger in the combine. You're asking that auger that's to push the grain up to fill it. Then the next thing you do is you put a 75 bushel or 150 bushel grain extension on it. That auger's got to work extremely hard to push that grain to fill the bin. So check that auger, check the housing on that auger. Those are going to start wearing thin over a period of time with all the bushels that are going through it. Also check the drive dogs, especially if you have a folding auger where the 2 augers fold, there's a drive dog there. Check that for wear. Then you get into the discharge part of it as far as the vertical auger, probably the second hardest working auger on the machine. That auger runs straight up and then tries to make a 90-degree bend with the grain. Check that auger, especially at the drive at the bottom. There's 2 bevel gears that run together that drive that auger, and then up at the top there's a 90-degree auger, runs the horizontal auger. You're going to have to check that also. There's a lot of wear in that vertical auger, so please take time to check that. Otherwise, you're going to have lower capacity. It's going to be harder to get things unloaded, and you're going to ruin grain there because if the auger's worn and sharp edges on any of these augers, it's going to ruin the quality because it's going to skin up the product. Then you get to the last part, or what you think might be the last part, is the residue. You're getting rid of the residue and you're thinking, well, I've got my product, I can just kick the stuff out, I'm done. Here again, you're going to lose horsepower as these knives are rounded on the edge. They have sharp knives. Depending on the combine, you could have stationary knives, but it's going to take horsepower to cut that up. Think of it as a pocket knife trying to cut a string. If that pocket knife is dull, you're sawing at it, and you've got long product coming out, you could have knives that are winged. These go back to back and only have one wear edge. They're not, you can't flip them over. But think about that as you get longer product coming out, you're trying to get the product cut up to smaller pieces so it starts breaking down. Also, if you have longer pieces coming out of there, it's hard for the fins to deflect it and make that wide pattern that you would like. So please check the chopper knives, check for wear and tear on those. That is just about as far as the high wear items. Obviously, this whole combine is a wear item. There's a lot of belts that need to be looked at. There's a lot of idlers. All the belts have idlers on them. All the chains have idlers on them. Those need to be checked. Spring tension on a lot of those need to be checked. Again, I'm going to push for the technician to at least come out and take a look at that. He can tell you what adjustments need to be made, what items need to be replaced now, what could be waited for a later time. Biggest thing we want to do at TGG is to have a very productive harvest, but we also want you to have a safe harvest. Keep all your safety shields in place. If you have any questions, need anything, please call us at TTG Equipment and ask for parts, sales, or service. Thank you.